So for today's exploration, we have 3 speakers. Josie, if you want to take it away.
Okay, so I'm just here today to talk to you guys about kind of how I ended up here as a graduate student. I'm sitting in my lab office right now. So how did I end up here today? So I'm going to start with my childhood. So I grew up in a town called Arlington, Massachusetts. So it's a town kind of right near Boston, like about 10 miles outside the city. Fun fact about the town is that Paul Revere rode through on his little journey to tell everyone that the redcoats were coming. Okay, so I grew up there with my family. Here's me when I think this is like I'm 8 years old. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. And this is probably the last time that I was the tallest of my siblings. So I'll show you a picture of you guys. I'll show you guys a picture of us now, and you'll see it's a little bit different. But yeah, there's the 4 of us grew up, and I really liked math and science as a kid. So here's me also when I was little, mixing vinegar and baking soda to make a little bit of a science experiment in my kitchen. But my dad is an English teacher. My mom is a social worker. So neither of them do any science really in their jobs. But I loved math as a kid. I thought I wanted to be a math teacher when I grew up. And I ended up going into science. And here's the 4 of us now. So this is my youngest brother. He had the pretty blonde curls when he was little. Now he's all grown up. And so this is us in reverse age order. And I'm studying chemistry in grad school. My sister's studying biology in grad school. This brother just applied to graduate school in biology. And this one just started college. He's a freshman studying engineering. So we all ended up kind of going into science, even though our parents are kind of confused how that really happened. Oh, just one thing I see in the chat, William's asking if this is where Arlington Cemetery is. And no, Arlington Cemetery, I believe, is in Virginia. There are actually Arlingtons in probably most states named after the original one, where Arlington Cemetery is. So we just copied the name. Okay, so moving on from high school, I graduated Arlington, and then I went to Fordham University, which is a school in the Bronx. And while I was there, I studied chemistry, and I really loved it. I did fun research in different labs, but I also got a chance to study theology. So I was able to take a bunch of classes at in Catholic theology, because Fordham is a Catholic school, but also got to take some courses in Buddhism. I took one class that related ecology, or the study of the planet, with religion, and that was actually one of my favorite courses. So that was a cool experience to be able to take classes like outside of just STEM. And also while I was at Fordham University, I ran on their cross country and their track team. So I was an okay runner when I was in high school, but I really loved it. And so before I ended up going to Fordham, I just emailed the coach and kind of asked if I could walk onto the team. He said yes, and he kind of explained that the way it works at that school in particular is that if you're someone who needs kind of like some time to improve, you can come be on the team, like go to practice every day, work really hard, and then once you get fast enough, you can go to kind of the bigger meets and championship races. So for most of my first 2 years of college, I kind of just worked on getting better at running. And then my junior and senior year, I got to go to like the big championship races, which was really fun. It's definitely a balance to be a student athlete. You have to find the time to do both your work for classes and lab, as well as time to work hard at your sport. But I think a big takeaway here is that if it's something that you want to do, you should ask. Don't just like assume it's something you can't do. So I wasn't maybe as good as other people on the team, but I asked the coach if I could have a shot, and he said yes. So I think always the worst you can get kind of there is a no. Okay, so I spent my 4 years at Fordham, and as I was heading towards graduation, I kind of had to think about what was next. I had decided that I really wanted to go to graduate school. I wanted to keep learning more about chemistry, working on my lab skills and things like that. But I also realized I wasn't ready to go straight there. So I had heard about this organization called Jesuit Volunteer Corps Northwest. And the way this program works is you get to spend a year living with other volunteers, spending like the whole year working on doing social justice work. So I decided this was something I really wanted to do. I talked to my professors about it, and they didn't really like the idea. They were like, Josie, you're doing great in chemistry. You should just go right to grad school. That's perfect for you. And I was like, I don't think so. I think this is something that's really important to me. I would feel like I'm kind of missing an opportunity right now if I didn't get to spend a year doing the service work. So I applied for the year, and I ended up living in Montana with these wonderful people here. And it was beautiful, and it was a lot of fun, and I got to work in an elementary school. So I taught PE, or a gym class, to elementary school students, which is pretty different from studying chemistry. And someone in the chat just said they like basketball. And let me tell you, these kids loved basketball. They were so much better than me, but I got a lot better during that year, even as the teacher. But it was really fun. I got to do some science enrichment also with the kids. So I got to do a little bit of that outside just teaching in the gym. So that was great. And while I was there, I ended up applying to graduate schools. I got into a lot of my top choices, which was really exciting. It also shows that I think taking a year off was probably a good thing for me, despite with what some of my chemistry professors wanted to think. So now I'm here at Yale. I work in the Breadbig lab with these wonderful people. This is us out to like a holiday dinner last year. I guess we will not be doing that this year, but really fun group of people to work with. My research is working on solar fuels. So this is where we use energy from the sun to turn water into like oxygen and some sort of fuels. If you want to learn more about this, I gave a talk a while ago. We'll send you the links later if you want to learn more about that science. I can tell you about it by listening to that talk, or you can reach out and ask me. But I also am still running. So here I run with a club called the New Haven Road Runners. This is the last race we all ran together back in March, the very beginning of March, kind of the last in-person race that we had. And some of you guys might recognize this man here. This is Mayor Elliker. He joined us for a picture at the end. He's also a runner. And so, yeah, I'm here in New Haven, working in lab, which I absolutely love, and also continuing to run, which has been fun. And then the next chapter of my life, it's really still a big question mark. I don't know what I want to do next. I think I like teaching, so maybe something like that, but there's a whole lot up in the air, which I think is okay. And that's where I'm going to leave you for now. I'm going to hand the floor over to Zuhair, but I hope to be able to talk to some of you more in the breakout rooms. Thanks for listening.
So I am Zuhair Abdulla, and as they mentioned earlier, I'm what's called a postdoc in the Department of Psychiatry here. So what that means, a postdoc is somebody who's finished graduate school and has gotten their doctorate, but isn't a professor yet. So it's this little middle zone between finishing school and getting a real job. So I am here to learn more about a specific type of knowledge. So I'll be here for a few years as a postdoc. So I wanted to tell you guys about my journey into science. I had a very unconventional pathway, I guess. So if you guys have any questions as we go along, I can't see the chat, but if anybody wants to mention it, I'll answer anything that comes up as we go. So I took the long way to getting into science. So when I was a kid, I'm this guy right here. That's me there. That's me there too. I have these like really strong memories of my dad like talking to me about science. He wasn't a scientist, but he's in an adjacent field. He's in an engineering field. But he always really liked science, and I really liked it a lot too growing up, but I never really understood it, and I was always sort of intimidated by it. I always thought it seemed difficult at first. So it wasn't something that I was really thinking about doing when I went to high school or when I went to college. When I was in high school, I really just wanted to play music and take pictures. I was really involved in being a musician. Whoops. So that's me there. And I took pictures of bands and stuff, and I really enjoyed doing that stuff. But I was sort of a little unfocused when it came to school because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And so I ended up switching majors a few times. Like Josie, I actually liked math a lot when I was in high school, so I started out as a math major. It didn't really fit too well for me, so I ended up finishing up with a degree in history, which I didn't end up using specifically. Instead, I sort of followed my, musical passion a little bit. I realized at one point that I wasn't very good at playing music, but I had friends that were very good at it. And I thought that maybe I could help them out. So that sort of led to this very brief career working in the music industry. And so I was there for a few years, and it was really fun. And for a while, I got to tour around the U.S. with different bands, and I got to go to Europe, which was really fun. But as I got a little older and kept doing it, I realized that it wasn't really rewarding and it wasn't really sustainable. I was starting to get tired, and I started looking for something else to do. And I remember on my last tour, I decided that I really wanted to do something else. So I ended up quitting that job in 2010. And when you're on the road, you have a lot of downtime when you're driving from city to city. And I would spend a lot of that time, I just found myself kind of naturally falling into this hole of just reading everything I could about neuroscience. And there were these great authors, and they're still around writing great books, that write neuroscience books and psychiatry books that are written for the general public. So these are guys like V.S. Ramachandran or Oliver Sacks. And I would just eat it up. I'd also listen to a lot of podcasts. Radio Lab is a really great one if you guys haven't heard it. I haven't kept up with it recently, but it was really responsible for getting me interested as an adult into science again. They take all these like really complicated scientific facts, and they break them down into something that's really digestible, really understandable, and very interesting. And although when I was younger and through high school and through college, I never really thought about science as an option, as I got older and I found these resources, I started thinking, this is not only really interesting, but it sounds like it might be something that I could try to do. And so after kind of struggling with what I was going to do after music, I decided to go back to school and see what I could learn in this field. So toward the end of 2010, I enrolled in the local community college, Riverside City College. This was in California. And I took just like a couple of classes. One of the classes I took was called biological psychology. And it was everything that I was looking for. It was just an introduction class, but I felt like I was learning so much about the brain and how it's involved in, every type of psychiatric disorder. I found it really interesting. And about a year later, I transferred to a small state school to get to start working on my second bachelor's degree. And while I was there, I was really lucky. I got to work with Sanders McDougall and Cynthia Crawford right here, who ran what's called a Developmental Psychopharmacology Lab. And what that means is that they studied how drugs and different medicines affect the developing brain. So it was really interesting. And being somebody who was brand new to science, had only basically had a year of psychology classes, they were very kind and put me on research projects right away. And I really got to literally get my hands in the science and start learning how to do research. And it was a really great opportunity. I fell in love with it. I was very lucky again in that during my summers, I was able to go to UCLA, which was about an hour and a half from where we were living and where my school was in San Bernardino, and work with Wendy Walwyn, who taught me about the biochemistry of the brain. So I was learning how to do all these like behavior things with Sanders and Cynthia, and Wendy taught me some real down and dirty, like what we call wet lab techniques. So looking at different proteins and stuff in the brain. After that, I applied to graduate schools, and I ended up going to the University of Cincinnati in Ohio, where I did all of my research at the Cincinnati Children's Hospital. It's a really, really cool hospital. It's a big building with like 5 separate towers, and 3 of those towers are just dedicated to research. So it was a very heavy research intensive campus. While I was there, I got to work with a guy called Matthew Skelton. He is right here. And these were all my great lab mates that I got to meet and work with while I was there for about 5 or 6 years. And there we studied something called the creatine transporter deficiency. And I won't get too into that unless people are interested later in the breakout sessions. But it's essentially a disease that is caused by a mutation in a single gene. And it causes a lot of problems, primarily in regards to thinking and language development. It's a really tough disorder. And so while I was there, we worked mostly towards trying to understand how that disorder develops and how we can treat it. So I graduated there just about a year ago, maybe 13 months ago. And I was very fortunate to get picked up as a postdoc by Marina Picciotto here at Yale. And I'm brand new in the lab. I've only been there for a few months, so I'm still getting my feet wet. So I don't have a full research plan yet, but I'm really excited about what we can do. Her lab focuses on a brain chemical called acetylcholine. And we look at how changes to this chemical affect different things like stress, depression, anxiety, or learning, or addiction. And it's all really exciting and really cool. And I get to work on something that I'm really passionate about, which is depression. It's something that I've been wanting to work towards for the last few years. And I'm really excited that I get to do it now. But so aside from being, a scientist, I'm also a dad. So here are my kids that I really like a lot. They're good children. This one is named Nima, and she's 3. This one here is named Rowan, and he's going to turn 2 on the day before my birthday, which is in about a month, which means that I don't have a birthday anymore, but that's okay because he's cute and I like him. And this is my beautiful wife here. And aside from being a dad and being a neuroscientist, I really like racing bikes. And I think it's really fun that, I get to have this like really cool job that I thought was scary going into it. but turns out to be really rewarding, really fun. And I have time to hang out with my kids and ride bikes. And so it's really fun. Don't know if there are any other questions, but I guess I just wanted to finish by saying that, science can seem intimidating at first, but it really is just like any other subject. You just have to take it day by day, and you learn as you go. It's really not as intimidating, or it seems very intimidating, but it really isn't. And like any subject, whatever you guys choose, whether it's science or math or English or art or anything, everything takes work, and it takes time to figure out what you want to do sometimes. So I guess that's about it for me. I will go ahead and turn it back to Kartika, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks so much, Zuhair. That was really interesting. So, I mean, you definitely had a very different path towards science, but like you said, it can seem intimidating, but you just have to be passionate and put in the work. But yeah, so next, so we had a little change of plans. So instead of Shannon, we're going to have someone you guys already know, Rick, and you probably heard him talk about his science, but today you're going to hear how he got there.
Welcome, everyone. So this is a bit of an impromptu presentation. I didn't prepare a whole lot before this, but we were doing a little bit of shuffling. So I'm really excited to talk to you all today about my roadmap to science, because I think that it's similar to Zuhair's and Josie's as well. We didn't come straight from undergraduate to graduate school. So I'm originally from Florida, and I'm from North Florida. So whenever you think of Florida, you probably think about Disney, right? Similar to Kartika's ears. But Florida is very much different than just Disney World. It's especially North Florida. People really do consider it the deep South. So lots of Southerners there, Southern food, and it's very different from what you might expect normally. But my town is really small. It's about 10,000 people, and it's called Palatka. There's actually a new Indian restaurant in New Haven called Pataka, and I was really surprised when I saw it because it was very similar in name to my hometown. But we're on the St. Johns River, which for anyone who's interested in trivia, it's one of it's one of two rivers that flow north in the world. So that's one of the very few pieces of amazing trivia we have for our city. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot else going on. And just to give you some background about me and my family, so neither one of my parents went to college. So going to graduate school was completely new for me. I really had no idea what that meant. So my dad does school board maintenance, and he used to do auto glass repair. So he would fix broken windshields and stuff like that. And I would have to go during school to help him replace windows if they were too big. My mom's a bookkeeper at a welding company. So she kept the books, did accounting and finances and stuff for that. And then I have several younger siblings, a brother and a sister who are pictured here. And I have 3 half brothers as well. So to give you a little background about what high school was like for me. So I worked ever since I was 15. I worked at a grocery store called Winn-Dixie. We don't really have those up here, but they're really popular in the South. So I started there as what they call a baby bagger, which meant that I basically could only work like 11 hours a week. But I did that for as long as I was 15 up until I turned 16. And then I worked at a seafood restaurant for the rest of that time called Musselwhite's. So I was a busboy, which means I cleaned up all the dirty dishes, filled up drinks, stuff like that. And then when I turned 18, I became a waiter, and I did that until I graduated. And during high school, I took some AP classes and did dual enrollment because my teachers told me that was going to be a good way to decrease the cost of college. So I didn't really have a clear plan of what I wanted to do for college, but my parents, even though they didn't go to college themselves, they always told me that, if you want to get out of this town, if you want to do something, education is the key. So they really pushed that on me for a long time, and I guess not pushed, but encouraged me. They didn't really have a lot of ideas on how to do things and how to get there, but they were very supportive in that way. And I graduated in 2009, which is over 10 years ago now. And so here's a picture at my graduation with a couple of my friends. And then here is a picture of me with my brother and sister at that time, and some of my closest friends right before I left for college. So this is one of my favorite pictures from back then that just show everyone together. And so just to give you a little bit of a taste of what I did in high school, So I was in band. I played the saxophone. So I actually played the alto saxophone, and then I marched as well with the alto, but I played tenor a bit in jazz band. I played soccer as well. So I was the goalkeeper there. So I'm actually not very good at soccer. I'm just good at jumping very fast, and I can take a hit to the head, which is I think probably one of my most redeeming qualities. And then I got really active in community service at this time too. And this is actually how I came to start thinking about doing things like science outreach and activities like that. So if you have heard of Rotary Club before, maybe some of your parents or grandparents are involved in that, and that's how. And so that's how I got into this. And it was actually a leadership camp that I went to in high school that taught me a lot about how to think about being a leader and serving others. And then last but not least, I also did musical theater. In high school, I was also not very good at it, but they needed more guys in musical theater. And so it was actually really fun, like murder mystery musical and musical within a musical. So musicalception. It was pretty fun. But that's all just to say that, you don't have to have one set of interests in high school. You can do quite a few and continue to do that. And so I went to the University of South Florida, which was a state school, and I went on scholarships and grants. So even though my parents were really supportive of college, they couldn't pay for it or help me at all with that. And so I had to get scholarships and also grants from the government in order to pay for that. And I worked throughout college as well to pay for whatever was left over after financial aid. So I worked at a computer lab on campus, and I also worked at a frozen yogurt store. So if you've ever been to like Yogurt Mountain or things like that, I was the guy that would clean up all your messes afterwards and refill the toppings. And the way that I got into science, though, was I emailed a lot of professors, and I just begged them basically. I was like, can I please do research? Because when I went to school initially, people, they would say, okay, you did well in school, so maybe you'll be a doctor. And then as I learned more about what it means to be a doctor in the pre-med track, I realized that wasn't for me. And so I wanted to get into research once I found out that was a possibility. And so I emailed a bunch of professors and got really lucky with an internship at this company called Neurostructural Analytics. And so this was a cool company because I got to basically draw brain cells and use those drawings to analyze complexity and like how big neurons were in comparison to, for instance, diseased brains. And then eventually I got into a bioengineering company. And that allowed me to grow brains outside the lab. And this was a really awesome opportunity and also super lucky. And I only got the job because the person who was offered the job initially said no. And so I was the second string, basically. And so I share that information just to let you know that sometimes things work behind the scenes in a lot of different ways than you might expect. And then I see a question in the chat about student debt. Do I have left? I actually don't have any debt. So I went to school, undergraduate, for free. I actually got some money back based on my financial need. So I was in the highest need category because my dad was unemployed at the time, and my mom didn't make very much money. So I didn't I didn't have to take out any loans, thankfully. And here's just a picture of some of the brain cells that I grew outside of the body that I was really interested in. So I just wanted to share them because I think they're really beautiful. And then after USF, so I graduated from school in 2013 with a degree in cell and molecular biology. And this is a picture of me and my dad and a picture of really close family friends as well. And then I applied to graduate school. So I applied to a couple of schools and I did not get in anywhere at all. So not a single place gave me an interview or even accepted my application at all. And so I had to figure out how to get a job. And I ended up getting a job at a cancer drug company that was close to my old school. So they needed a biologist and I needed a job. And so it worked out pretty well. They taught me a lot about cancer biology, which was not my favorite, but I did get to learn a lot about how to handle mice and how to work with them. So this is a couple pictures of me. And also I did a bunch of cell culture work there, which I was growing cells outside of the body, but instead of brain cells, it was cancer cells this time. And so eventually I reapplied to schools and I got into a few of them and I decided to attend Yale for graduate school. And so this was now 2015 is when I got into graduate school. This is a picture of me and my dad driving from Florida all the way up to Connecticut in a U-Haul. And unfortunately in this picture, you can't see it here, but the air conditioner was broke. So we had to drive all the way up I-95 with the windows down in the Florida heat for most of it. And then here's a picture of lunch with classmates during my first year here. And then lastly, just to wrap it up, I want to show you that I still have some interest inside grad school as opposed to science. Many of you know me from doing science outreach, but I also, believe it or not, do work in the lab. This is a picture of me wearing a gown in the animal colony. And then I really love to garden and also play board games, card games, video games. I'm a big fan of those. And I usually look extremely intense, even if I'm stacking cardboard pictures of cats together. And then also, I like to take my cats for walks with my wife. My wife is pictured here. So yeah, as I said, this was a kind of an impromptu talk, but I wanted to walk you through sort of a non-linear path to get to science. And just, I think one of the big takeaways is that a lot of times when I applied for something or wanted to do something, it didn't work out the first time, but it still ended up working out.